With the user input controls finished, we can now turn to displaying information back to the user. To do this, we're going to add some additional text blocks to our layout, but we want to modify them slightly to make the app easier to use and read. Customizing fonts in Windows Phone 8 has a few caveats to it. While it is as simple as entering a text size and font family, there are some built-in resources to help ensure future compatibility and keep your app looking consistent with the rest of the operating system. In this video, we'll look at some of these options for creating consistent text in your app. If you're continuing from the previous video, you can keep working with the project currently open. If not, open the Start project for this lesson from the exercise files. Let's start with the basics. Let's go ahead and go back into Visual Studio, and we're going to create an empty tag. We want to place this under the tip amount header text, which in my window is on line 61. So let's go ahead and start by adding in a new text block. Now let's give it a unique name. We'll go back and say X name, and we'll call it tip amount. Now, although the value of this text block will be determined by code, which we'll be writing in the next chapter using C#, we should put some placeholder text in for now to see it in context with the rest of the layout. So let's go ahead and add in a text attribute and add in $5.25. Now we'll see the text displayed on the left-hand side in Design View. But as you can see, it's not very easy to read. We need to adjust it to make it stand out a bit more. We can do this by adjusting the font size. For this part, we're going to work with the Properties panel in Visual Studio. Depending on your layout, it might not be open. To open it, click once on the file we were working with in the Solution Explorer, and then click the wrench icon. That will display the Properties panel. In this case, I also have it docked here on the right-hand side. If you forget to click on the file in the Solution Explorer, you might get properties for the project or even for a different file, so make sure you've clicked on the right one. The Properties panel is contextually sensitive to the object selected in Design View, or the code that the cursor is currently on in Code View. To display the properties of our new text box, we're going to select it in Design View. You'll see the name and type at the top of the Properties panel, confirming that we have the right object selected. We want to work with the font properties of the text block, which are under the heading Text. We're going to click on the disclosure triangle to show all the different options. You'll see that the current font size is 20 pixels. We can adjust this here to make it larger. Let's go ahead and set it to 48. You'll see the text get larger in Design View, but I also want to call your attention to the Code View. A new attribute, font size, was added to the text block. If we go into the code, we can also adjust it here. Let's change 48 to 72. There, now the text is nice and big. In fact, it is the same size as the Calculate text at the top, which creates a nice symmetry with the layout. But the font is pretty bold. We can lighten the weight of the font by using a font family. In Windows Phone 8, the default font is known as Segoe WP. This font is installed on your system along with Visual Studio. Now, along with this font, there are a number of built-in styles called system resources that you can use to apply to various components, including our new text box here. Accessing, though, is a little tricky, but let's go through that together. First, make sure that the text block is selected. In the Properties panel, we want to click the little square to the right of the Segoe WP font family dropdown. You'll see a little flyout menu display. Select System Resource, and you'll see that there are a number of font styles that are built in. They range from bold, light, normal, semi-bold to semi-light. Select Phone Font Family Semi-Light. It is slight, but the text is a little lighter in weight than it was before. As you can see, the font family attribute was added, but instead of a specific name, it is using this static resource to link the value of the attribute to its stored value that is part of the phone. Now, you may ask yourself, this seems silly. Just pick the semi-light font in the dropdown and call it a day. However, the power here is that if the default font changes for some reason, your app is future-proofed, since it isn't dependent on a specific resource. In the next chapter, we're going to use the same principle with color, and you'll see that these styles can also be dynamic at times, which allows your app to customize itself based on user color and theme preferences. Let's repeat this for the second text block we need to create at the bottom, but this time we'll do it in code. Let's call the text block total amount, and we'll add in $25 as a placeholder. So we're going to go underneath total header and create a new text block here. X name, and we'll call it total amount, text, and we'll add in $25. Now we want to add in the other two attributes, font size and font family here as well. So we can go ahead and type in font size, we'll make it 72, and then font family, we're going to enter it in exactly as we have it on line 62. Static resource, phone, font, family, semi-light. Make sure you check with how I have it spelled also on line 62. There's a mixture of capitals and lowercase letters, and it has to be exactly spelled the way that I have it here. Then we just go to the end, and we'll close the tag. With this added, we now have our new text block and applied the font size and font family just like we did before, but in this case we did it entirely in code. Alright, so we covered a few things in this video, so let's go ahead and take a look back. First, we created new text block components and gave them unique names and placeholder values. Then we customized them using two workflows. The first was to open the Properties panel and update it there. One adjustment was made to the font size, and the other was to the font family. But for the font family, we worked with the built-in styles or static resources for Windows Phone to derive the font from those predefined settings. The other workflow we used was entirely code-based, where we used the font size and font family attributes and set them to the same values to get the same result.